When you get into leadership, I always say you need to lead yourself before you lead other people.
If you don't have a good team working environment, the tower crumbles. I manage about 90 employees. Be authentic and really set some expectations with your staff and build trust. During that time, I gained about 40 pounds.
What is the best advice that you've received to date? Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the RK Leadership Podcast, where we empower tomorrow's leaders through the sharing of knowledge, experience, and stories. I'm your host, Rob Kamranpoor, and with me today is my special guest, Kristin Grimes, and she's a registered nurse with a Master's of Science in Nursing and certification in infection control. And she's currently the assistant manager in medical surgical ICU in Arizona. Before I pass it on to you, Kristin, I wanted to thank you so much for being with me today and, sharing your experience, your knowledge, and your stories with the audience. I'm sure, there's a lot of good things to talk about today, and there's a lot of good takeaways for the audience that's listening in. So, without further ado, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to the RK Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Amazing. Okay, so let's jump right into it. I want to ask you. I want to start off by kind of maybe you sharing your story with us and how you got to your leadership position today.
Sure. So I started out as a registered nurse. I live in a small rural community in Arizona. And I decided after several years of bedside nursing that I really wanted to make an impact in my community. And so I started just reaching out and looking for opportunities to grow in my field. I became a manager of an ambulatory surgery center just a few months after graduating nursing school. Just happened to be the right place and right time, and joined the group that I did at a different facility while working a bedside nurse position at our local hospital. And once I did that, I started getting into leadership, a little bit of management. I had a great mentor, and I really believe that she is one that really shaped me into who I am today. She's one of my best friends, and now she's retired, and I often call on her as a mentor in my career. But really, she just shaped me to who I am today, and I'm very thankful and grateful for her as a mentor. Currently, in my current role, I manage about 90 employees at our community hospital, and I'm in a different role than I've ever been in before. And it's just posed some challenges and growth opportunities, and I'm just really thankful for the role I have now. I'm growing in ways that I never thought I would.
Amazing, awesome. Well, congratulations, and
Thank you.
there's lots to talk about today. So why don't we start off with you've been in this role, you're managing or leading, I like to say, 90 people. Can you walk us through some of the challenges that you've come across and how do you deal with those challenges as a leader? And what can you share with the audience in terms of, what has been the biggest lesson for you in terms of that learning and coming across those challenges?
Sure. So oftentimes, we hear leadership and management is the same term, and it definitely isn't.
Yeah.
I believe that I'm a strong visionary leader, but I also like to be very transparent with my staff and and set some expectations. So if I could take one key thing that I could do, I would say be authentic
Mm.
and really set some expectations with your staff and build trust. Those are the three pillars that I live by. Authenticity, your staff have to trust you. They have to recognize that you're a human just like they are and that you were in their shoes once. And so you really just need to set that bond and trust from day one. And then coming off of that, just being a leader and leading by example is really important for me.
So, Kristen, you talked about trust. Now, for young leaders out there, for people that are getting into new leadership roles or been in their early career in leadership,
Mhm.
a lot of people struggle with building trust. What's your advice to young folks out there in terms of how do you build trust with your team?
I think you need to put yourself in their shoes. I think you need to lead by example. And I think you also have to approach them with confidence. When you approach somebody and you ho hum about things, well, I may need you to do this, and you talk about, okay, well, we need to hit these numbers, but you don't have a clear pathway or a purpose, a way to get there. I think people lose confidence that you are not their leader, you're their peer. And I think that in order to be a strong and authentic leader, you have to set the example that you are their leader. You are the person that's going to bat for them. If something comes to happen, you're going to be right there on their side, but you need to set some expectations, and you have to have clear goals. So those expectations and those clear goals are important. But like I said, you have to build that trust early on, and I think the only way to do that is lead by example. Get on the ground with them, get boots on the ground, and work alongside them versus being superior to them. And in my example and my history as a leader and a manager, um, if you do that, they don't have any choice than to follow. They join your team because you're boots on the ground and you're working together. And as any nurses out there know, nursing is a team sport.
Definitely.
I joke and say it's a sport and not a career because I feel like sometimes we're running the race. We're trying to figure out what we need to do on our shift, and you can't do it alone. Most hospitals have a tiered system where they have a manager, a supervisor of a clinical support, they have a nurse, and then they have an assistant or like a certified nursing assistant or a licensed nursing assistant that helps the nurse throughout their care duties and complete tasks timely for patient safety. And if you don't have a good team working environment, the tower crumbles. You
That's
you
right.
know, you have a horrible day. And I can think back when I was first a nurse, sitting in my car, really, really just every ounce I had to get some confidence to walk through that door because I knew what I was gonna walk into, and I worked for some places that didn't have great teamwork, and
That's
the teamwork really is key. That can make or break you.
absolutely. Now, I will get into confidence a little bit later on, but I want to get your point because you've been instilled in this industry for quite a bit. And, when I started RK Leadership, I came across a lot of nurses who were so frustrated with, their superior or their managers. And I've heard nothing but complaints from the nursing industry. Um, I know it's a very delicate job where, you're dealing with so many emotional beings all the time. You're seeing certain things that the normal human being doesn't see on a daily basis. So it takes a toll on your mental health. In your opinion, Kristen, why do you think, there's a lack of leadership in healthcare? And what can we do to change that?
I love that question. That could be a loaded question, but for me, it really comes down to identifying what your team needs
Mhm.
and finding the leadership that will support you and your team. I've been very lucky in my career that I've had some great administrators that I went to them with a business plan. Once I identified what my team needed, and I went to them with a business plan, and I proposed what we could do to retain our staff. I don't know if you know what the current wage looks like, but turnover for nurses in the U.S. stems from about $40,000 to $50,000. Every time you turn over a nurse, it costs about $40,000 to $50,000 to actually hire and train a new nurse to take patients on their own.
Wow.
And, do that a few times and your budget is gone for the year. And so you really need to make sure that you retain your staff. And the way you do that is through trust. I work my fair share of nursing shifts as a supervisor and a leader. And when you get boots on the ground with them and you help them through their busiest and hardest days, they recognize that you're in their corner and you're going to be there. I've been very, very lucky, like I said, with leadership and administration. that has worked in my facility, that I've been able to go to them and tell them, this is my vision for my team. This is what my team needs to be successful.
Mhm.
And the other thing I think is important is not just take your own ideas, but take your team's ideas.
Yes.
You can't be a visionary leader and call yourself, a leader without going down to the front line and saying, what is not working for you? What do you need help with? What do we need to change? And that's something that my team and we do regularly. We have huddles, we talk about what's going well, what do we need help with, and sometimes that's, we need lunch today. We need lunch today. Let's get us lunch, let's get through the shift, and then we'll start again tomorrow. But I think when you don't have an authentic and empathetic leader and it's all about the dollar or the, monetary compensation to the facility, that's what I think nurses get frustrated with. Most nurses come into the field because they want to help people.
Right.
And when it comes down to the almighty dollar and we forget while we're there, we forget why we're taking care of patients. Most of us want to go into the field, like I said, to take care of our patients and we want to help people in our community and we want to leave an lasting positive impact. And it's difficult to do that when you are tied to a specific dollar amount. Um, our facility, oftentimes, when we have busy runs, busy days, we decide at the very beginning of the shift, is this going to be a pizza day? Is this going to be, do you need lunch? Do you need drinks? Do you need snacks throughout the day? What do you need? And I think as leaders and managers, sometimes we get so busy in what I call the noise around us.
Yes.
We forget to remember our people are human and they need breaks and they need food. And sometimes um, they need an emotional break. Um, and sometimes that's me coming, recognizing someone's stressed and asking them to walk outside and get some fresh air and take a break.
Absolutely. No, those are great points, Kristen. Now, again, being in that high stress environment, looking after people, you're at a certain level of leadership. Now, when you look above you, we lead up, down, and across. When you look above you, do you feel like, and you can go way above to ownership, government? I don't know how some facilities are ran in the States. So I'm assuming there's some, private ownership as well.
Mhm.
Do you think, they're providing you and your teams in terms of leadership from the top there, and they take care of their people, and they're training and providing proper onboarding and tools for new leaders to be successful? Are they setting leaders in healthcare for success, or is it more like, we're just concerned about the bottom line, you guys are just there to do whatever work that needs to be done?
I think some organizations do, and I think some don't. I hear from my peers, I hear from my colleagues that, it's just a rat race, and then you decide what's more important and what you value most. I've been in organizations, especially during COVID, that you could literally walk in the building and just see the stress on everybody's faces. And like I said, the organizations really that I feel like have come out strong after COVID are those that treated their staff like humans.
Hmm.
Not just like robots that you're going to just work endless shifts, that you're going to put in endless hours, that we expect everyone to work overtime. That's not what a good leader does. A good leader steps in when they see their team struggling and they find a solution. And like I said, I like to find a solution with my team. And oftentimes they have great ideas and they're really the vehicle for success. Um, some organizations, like I said, are very tied to the dollar. And while, healthcare organizations, we often forget we're a business.
Yes.
We are a business just like everybody else. We got to keep the doors open and we've got to keep people coming in because in healthcare, at least in the States, we get reimbursed for our expenses. So you have to put the dollar out there and spend it before you get money back. And depending on how you perform based against your peers, you may not get all your money back. You may get a percentage of it back. So the goal is really high performing teams and throughput. You want to get your patients in and out in a timely fashion. You want them to have good outcomes, and it's a delicate balance for sure.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about, again, taking a timeline like COVID, and again, you add additional stress to people. What do you do as a leader to avoid burnout, your team's burning out, and even yourself burning out in those kind of situations that we went through?
I think burnout is so common in nursing these days, especially after going through COVID. We realized that we can't work 24/7 and we have to take time for ourselves. It's so important because you can't pour from an empty cup. And we try to teach new leaders and new nurses this same thing. I was just in a facility in a workshop a couple of days ago talking about this same thing on how you have to really focus on you. And wellness is so important because in the healthcare industry, we forget as we go through and we learn about anatomy and physiology. You have your sympathetic nervous system, which is innate. It's we're born into this, and our hormones adapt to this. And that's our fight or flight system to save our family, or we were killing something to eat it. As hunters and gatherers, that's what we did. And now when we don't have that, when you work too much or you have too much stress in your life, and nursing's definitely a very stressful, very, very stressful and time intensive um, career, that it's very, very difficult and it's very hard to not get pulled into that because, as I stated earlier, most nurses are caregivers. They want to help other people, and, unfortunately, sometimes they give too much of themselves, and then there's nothing left for them. So I think it's important to prevent burnout day to day, just taking those breaks. You not believe how many nurses don't ever take lunch breaks. They don't take breaks to go to the bathroom. They'll go to the bathroom one time in the shift in 12 hours. They'll forget to drink. During COVID, we saw people getting urinary tract infections routinely because they'd wear a mask all day and they forget to go have a drink of water. So it's really important to make sure that we take care of ourselves day to day. But, in the long term, gosh, it's so important. That was me during COVID. I had a very stressful job during COVID. I'm an infection control nurse. So I was the one making decisions. I was setting up care sites. I was looking over things, identifying who needed training for PPE. Who was going to get the training that needed training intensely for going into those danger zones. Going into those high traffic areas. We were constantly looking at a project when we were trying to figure out how to surge, how to put more patients in a hospital setting or even a clinic setting, and how do we put them together? How do we put the sick ones next to the well ones and make sure that they don't get sick? So it was overtaxing. It was very stressful. During that time, I gained about 40 pounds. Um, this was so intense. And, I've always been a very thin person. And it was amazing. During that time, I didn't even realize. I had no clue what was going on, and I was just eating things, just anything in my reach because it may have been the only time I ate all day. And I was eating sugary foods. I was eating complex carbs that were fried and in seed oils and all those things. And I ended up gaining 40 pounds. I remember one night I was reviewing data and there was something that needed to be turned in, as quickly as possible. There was a report that was needed immediately. And I remember looking at data thinking, I just need to stay up a couple more hours. And I ended up falling asleep and I had set my alarm for the time that I needed to wake up and submit my data. And I recognized I slept 2 hours. So think about that, 2 hours in a whole 24 hours, you're sleeping 2 hours. If you know anything about sleep patterns, you're not hitting REM, you're not hitting your recovery phase, you're not hitting your rest phase, 2 hours. And then at that time, I was wearing an Apple Watch,
Mm.
and it was kind of my savior because it would tell me, "Hey, Kristen, stand up, stretch, take a breath. Your heart rate's getting too high. Let's breathe, let's relax." And, the Apple Watch actually identified one time during some stretch of COVID that I had not hit REM in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
So 3 days straight, I did not sleep, and I just didn't recognize my cortisol level was super high. I started getting sick and having symptoms I'd never had before, and through all of that, it was really, really weird to recognize that I didn't even notice. I didn't notice. I was pouring my cup into everybody else's cups, and I forgot to pour into my own.
Absolutely. And there's a huge danger when it comes to that. And I look at a lot of industries, and it happens in various industries where you're in a 9 to 5 job. Look at people's schedules now. 9 to 5, they're booked in meetings. When do you have time to, again, self-care, eat, drink? And you get these managers drinking 5, 6, 7 cups of coffee all day. And that's their survival mechanism, is just drinking coffee and thinking, I'll be okay. But again, that's the short term. And long term, you're doing so much damage to your body that's it's unreal. And yourself being in the healthcare industry and knowing it, like, consciously,
Mhm.
that things are bad for you. And when you get into leadership, I always say you need to lead yourself before you lead other people. And when we talk about self-care, again, what do you do for yourself, Kristen, to ensure that you're taking care of yourself, your health, and you're in the right state of mind before you come into work again in that high stress situation, and be able to, operate smoothly and deal with the chaos around you?
Well, I think it starts with mindfulness.
Mhm.
I like to give gratitude every single day, and I think it's important also to find those things that trigger you. I've always been a very high-strung, happy person that just wants everybody to be successful. And when you have those triggers, maybe there's something going on at home. Maybe there's, an ailment, an illness, some sort of imbalance. In my case, I was just eating to survive, and nobody knew I was sleeping 2 hours a night.
Hmm.
Nobody knew I hadn't hit REM every day. And I look back now and I recognize all those days that I was irritable, that I was restless at work, that I was very short tempered. All those things impact your team. They
Yeah.
impact your team and your growth capabilities. If you walk in every day and you're angry, you're frustrated, your team is going to follow that type of attitude. And
Yes.
if you go in and you're positive and you're uplifting and you set some clear examples and clear expectations, your team's going to follow that.
That's right.
And I think that's the most important thing is when you go in, you have to have a clear mindset. You have to try to leave your problems at the door. And I've always had a manager, I'll never forget her. She always used to tell me, you leave your problems at the door. But how do you do that when a very high percentage of nurses are women?
Mhm.
Their wives, their mothers, their, caregivers at home. How do you leave all those things at home and still give a good effort at work?
Mhm.
And I think that's when your authenticity comes in. That's when you show, I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I like to show that I'm in the same boat as well, and I like to be a human.
That's
And
right.
I like to show that to them. So when they have that soccer game in the afternoon that they're going to miss because they're working, if we can make it work, we make it work. You go out and work a couple hours on the floor and take care of patients while your employee goes to the soccer game. You make sure that they recognize that you are there to support them and help them and make sure that they don't miss out on those life moments as well.
That's right. Awesome. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Um, I wanna talk about, again, leadership, vulnerability as a human being, and knowing your your own shortcomings and just being aware of yourself. Um, and the story of how, again, you and I met, through Facebook. At what point did you realize that, I need help and I need to reach out and get some help? Obviously we had coaching sessions together. How d-
Mhm.
how did you come to that point? And again, what would be your message to people going through the same stage where they won't do that because they won't allow their ego gets in the way?
I love that you mentioned ego. I think ego is that could kill you. It can make or break you.
Yes.
I think one of the big takeaways for me is I was self-reflecting.
Mm,
And I think self-reflection is such a key indicator for leaders because you can't constantly be beating yourself up. You have to recognize the wins. You got to take those dopamine hits and roll with it. I think you have to be proud of your efforts, but at the same time, you have to be aware of what you can do better. And, it's so important as a new leader that you do refill your cup, that you tell yourself, these are the hours I'm going to work, and these are the hours that I'm going to rest, and these are the hours I'm going to do some self improvement and self development. And that's where I was. I was doing self development an hour a day, and I usually do this before my family gets up. I get up, do my workout, and then while I'm resting, kind of cooling down, I'll listen to a podcast or I'll set a goal to learn something in self-development, whatever that may be. And one day I was listening to a podcast about ego. And ego is so important because if you don't have confidence, you're not going to have the confidence to lead others. But if you have too much confidence and your ego is too strong and too loud, you
yes,
can offend people. And you cannot recognize what you need to change in yourself.
that's right.
And I think that is so important. So that's what I recognized. I recognized I didn't have enough confidence. I was pouring too much out of myself into others, and I needed to figure out where to get my confidence. And I honestly don't know how we connected, but I'm so glad we did. Um, you helped me realize that I needed to figure out what my purpose was again. Why was I a leader? Why did I want to lead others? What were my goals? What was my vision for my team? And I think that's so important. You have to recognize what you're doing and why. And then you have to put forth, some values and expectations to your team. And that's the only way you're going to be successful.
Absolutely. Awesome. That's fantastic. And thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that, Kristen.
Yeah.
Now, again, you're in a role where you get an opportunity to develop leaders underneath you. How are you doing that today? And again, what would you like to share with the audience in terms of how important it is to develop those leaders, tomorrow's leaders? And we've got that ability to do it. How do you put time aside, again, dealing with that chaotic schedule? How do you time manage in those cases?
I think that's so important. I love building leaders because I'm not going to be in the workforce forever. I think it's important if you're going to be a good leader that you're constantly working to help others develop their skills. And if you don't know what they're strong in, it's going to be difficult. So I think you need to, again, get down to the level of your team, recognize what your team members are strong in, and then learn how to delegate a little.
Yes.
Let them get an opportunity to learn something, let them do it. I was just helping a colleague the other day work on a competency. And I said, "Have you ever done this before?" And they said, "No, never." I said, "Let me show you something that I did in the past." So I showed them example. We talked about a template they could put something into perspective, and then I let them take it and run with it. And what they came back with was fantastic. So unless you give your team members an opportunity to do something new, different, and empower them to do it, give them the tools
Yes.
and let's see what they do. not everything's going to come back perfect, but neither were we when we first started.
That's right. Absolutely. No, that's amazing. And again, I think it's so critical to develop people and kind of let them fail on their own and not hold their hand and not babysit them, because that's the precedence that you said, that if you keep helping them, they'll always come to you, and they won't be able to do anything without you. But once you allow them to fail and you're kind of hands off, they also build that confidence through that. So that's fantastic. Um, Kristen, I want to talk about culture. Now, I know you and I talked about, everything starts with culture.
Mhm.
Now, let's picture yourself going into a new organization, a new hospital, or whatever it may be. And, you know, you have to conform to this culture that's existent for many, many years. However, there's no aspects of leadership. They don't care about leadership. Again, it's the hustle and grind and the bottom line. How do you impact culture, and how do you, begin to change that? And can you change it?
I think you can. I think you can. I think you have to have a positive attitude.
Hmm.
I think you need to take small steps and set those goals. Have you ever heard of the analogy, you can't eat an elephant in one day?
Yes, yes.
Obviously, when you go into a new organization, especially as a visionary leader like myself, you tend to look at the wide picture. You look at the big picture. What am I doing? Where do I want to go? And it's really hard. And as a new leader, let me tell you, I have failed in this many times.
Mhm.
Going in and trying to accomplish everything in one day. I think that that's what a lot of new leaders do. They just want to make an impact. They want to do great work. They want to be recognized. And so they just go in and they try to bulldoze. And I think that's important not to do that. I think over time, as I've matured in my leadership career, I don't do that anymore. I set some goals and then I timeline them. What do I want to do in a week? What do I want to do in a month? What goals do I want to set for myself and my team in 6 months, in a year? And I think writing those goals out, I have a huge whiteboard in my office
Mhm.
that I do. I set up things that, what do I want to accomplish this week? What do I want to do next week? And sometimes you actually have to have a brainstorming session and say, okay, how am I going to get there? And with organizations that are very busy, sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in the noise.
Uh,
I love that word. I heard that from a leader one time and I just love that word. It was phrased in, we're not getting caught up in the noise. We're going to continue to be who we are.
mhm.
And I love that because it really sets the confidence and the precedent that we are going to be strong leaders no matter what is going on around us. The world can be crumbling around us and nobody's going to know
That's right.
inside the organization. And I think that that is a key takeaway for strong organizations and strong leadership, that you can just let things be around you and then you just continue on your journey and stay strong.
Absolutely. That's the way to be. Now,
Mm.
Kristen, at this point, I'm gonna kind of pass it on to you. And if there's a specific topic that you want to talk about, I want you to go ahead and ask your questions, or bring up something that you want to discuss during this podcast and share with the audience.
Yeah. So I really want to bring up nutrition. I want to talk about how nutrition affects us.
Mhm.
Because I know, Rob, I know you're very, very strong with nutrition, and I know that you really focus on exercise. And I'd like to kind of empower you and I to talk about nutrition a little bit more. Is that
Sure.
okay with you?
Absolutely. You want to start, or
Fantastic.
you want me to start?
So I want to ask you a couple
Yes,
questions.
go ahead.
So as you have a new leader and a new emerging leader, and they're just getting bombarded with things, and they're getting bulldozed with deadlines and all these time oriented activities, and like you said, you can be busy at work 9 to 5, and then you're spending 4 or 5 hours at home catching up for the next day, right? Prepping for the next day, prepping for the next meeting. I've been there. It's not fun. right? At some point you turn around and you reflect and you think, "Gosh, do I really wanna be a leader?
Yeah.
Do I really wanna keep doing this, or do I just wanna move back to where I was before?" How has exercise and nutrition helped you be successful?
Great question. Huge. So I would say it's a huge part in my life. I would say without it, I don't know if I would be in the place I am in the mindset that I've been. I've been exercising for 27 years plus. In the gym, and I play sports as well. It's the time that I think you get to de-stress, just remove everything from your mind, where when you're in the gym, you're not thinking about work, a deadline, a relationship, XYZ. Your focus is your body. And when you're able to tune in and you become one with yourself, it's amazing what your mind can do. So I always tell people I don't push weights with my body, I push it with my mind, because your mind is so powerful and so resilient that you have no idea what you're capable of doing. And I think there's so many people out in the world now with social media that you can see the limits that they break, and it's all in your mind. Every limit is you set is in your mind. So for me, and what's helped uh you know attribute to my success has been going to the gym. It's a non-negotiable for me. And even like when it comes to family, X, Y, and Z, I always find time. So one of the things I always hear is, well, I don't have time. Yes, you do. If you're getting up at 8, 9 in the morning, get up at 5, 6, 7 o'clock. Wake up an hour earlier, give yourself that time in the morning, and go to the gym. So one of the things I learned is to actually learn to develop your body to work in the morning, early in the morning, midday, afternoon, late night. So when I come home and it's like 8 o'clock at night, again, I don't go lay on the couch saying, I'm tired. I don't have energy. And when you get out of that comfort zone, that's when the growth happens. So you got to push yourself, show up. I don't care even if you go and you're in the gym for 10, 15 minutes, you start creating that habit, you'll start showing up. And that reflects in your day-to-day work, right? When you're at work, you'll learn that you can de-stress, walk away, breathing exercises, all that stuff really helps in my opinion.
I really just wanna, like, throw out the clapping emoji right now. This is making me so happy. So, I remember when we were on our one of our first coaching sessions, you told me, "Kristen, just show up." And I said, "I don't have time. Rob, I don't have time." You can't see my hair, but I have really, really long hair. It's thick. I said, "There's no way I'm gonna be able to go to the gym, wash my hair, get to work, be on time, hit my deadlines." And you said, "Kristen, show up." So I can't tell you how many times that's happened. I can tell you one time specifically. My son and I go to the gym together, and he's really my motivator. I always tell him, "Sweetie, I don't care how tired I am. Push me to go to the gym. Please be my external." And sometimes you need that motivator.
Yes.
Sometimes you just need that motivator that's like, okay, who is going to be my motivator? And I love that you said that because you were my motivator.
Thank
And then I turned it to my son and I said, "You're going to be my motivator." Because, I want to talk about some, brain hormones here in a minute. But, sometimes you don't always have that motivation. And sometimes it's your brain chemistry, it's your hormones in your brain. They're,
Yes,
they're telling you that you can't do it. And you have to find a way and a stimulus to push past this.
that's right.
And I can tell you, I worked a shift one time and I was up late the night before doing some prep work or something for a project. And then we had a call off at work. And I had to go in and they notified me at like midnight. "Hey, you're going to have to show up." And our shift starts at 6. And I live about 30 minutes away. So that meant I had to get up at 4:30 and I thought, "Oh geez, this is going to be a short change tomorrow, right?" Another 4 hours sleep night. At least I got more than 2. I got 4. Still didn't hit REM cycle. I didn't recharge my brain, so I was already tired. And I don't drink caffeine. I gave up caffeine about 5 years ago, and I just have not gone back to it. It's really bad for your heart. it's bad for longevity. And you mentioned all the cups of coffee and energy drinks that some people do just to get through their day.
Yes.
And I conditioned my body to go away from that. So I thought, okay, Kristen, you cannot go to the exercise. I mean, you can't go to the coffee, you can't go to the caffeine. So I went to work. I worked an all day shift. We worked 12 hours. I was there 12 and a half hours. And I was getting home about 8 o'clock. And my son texted me on my way home and said, Mom, we're still going to the gym. And I said, Oh, but I can't do it. I only had 4 hours of sleep last night. He said, Mom, you told me to push you, and I'm pushing you. And we went to the gym. It was one of the best workouts I've ever had in my life. And let me tell you, I slept so good that night. I woke up the next morning, even just after 8 hours, and I felt refreshed. My body was detoxed. I had a little bit of time in the sauna. It felt wonderful. I just think like you said, you have to be uncomfortable. And some days you have to push yourself.
That's right.
When you don't get any sleep and you're thinking, I just want to go veg on the couch. I just want that chocolate bar.
Yes.
I just want those potato chips. No, don't do it.
Yes.
Push past and be strong and be confident in your gym workout. I love, love, love that you've turned me into that mindset that I need to have a positive lifestyle. And even now today, I mean, we worked together a couple years ago. I love the fact that now those habits are still not gone.
Exactly.
I go to the gym 4 to 5 times a week. Sometimes it's 20 minutes. Sometimes I get in and I just do stretching, I just do yoga. Some days I go in and I hit the gym hard. And some days I go in and I'm saying, you know what, I don't want to lift today. I'm going to play basketball with my son. And I think all of those are important for wellness
That's right.
and great mindset.
That's right. Now you talked about one thing, and I quickly want to address this. You talked about motivation, and sometimes we need motivation. Now, sure, you can watch motivational videos. You can have somebody that tries to motivate you, but motivation only takes you so far, right?
Mhm.
It's the discipline that
Mhm.
gets you to get up, that gets you to not eat that chocolate bar, that gets you to, you know, put things away, put the TV away, do your work, whatever that you need to do. If you build that discipline, I'm telling you the power of discipline and what I learned in my life after so many years, it's priceless. It will change your life in every aspect. So everything that you tell yourself you can't do, with discipline, you'll get it done.
Mhm. I agree, and I think for me, at least, I verbalize things a lot. Anybody knows me, I'm a very big extroverted person. I like to talk to people. I like to get energy from people, but that only goes so far.
That's right.
It has to be an internal thing that you're doing, and I like to write it out. I like to have it all over the place because I like to remind myself. And I was thinking about this the other day. I was on the treadmill and I was running and I thought, gosh, I need to stop. I'm tired. I need to stop. And then there was a little key blurb that crossed across the screen, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is a dopamine hit. Dopamine is one of those brain motivating chemistries. These are the neurotransmitters that you get from your food, you get from exercise, you get it from external stimuli, and really that is your motivation. So, across the screen it read 20% done. And then pretty soon I thought, okay, I could do a little longer. I'm only
Yeah,
at 20. I got to get to 50. And then, I kept going, and I saw 50 and I thought, well, gosh, I'm halfway there.
that's
And
right.
so, those little key messages are put out there to give you those dopamine hits. And they're out there as motivators,
Yeah,
to remind you you're only halfway there. What's your goal?
that's
So
right.
again, I think it's so important to write your goals out. You got to write them out, you got to talk about them, you got to feel them, and then you really just got to keep pushing yourself. And you got to remember, what do you want? You only get one life.
Yeah,
What do you want in your life?
yeah,
And what are you going to do to get there?
that's right. I love that. I love how you said, with especially with goals, and I talk about this with all my coaching clients is, A, do you have any goals? If not, create your goals. And I know we did this exercise together where I said, make your goals big. Make sure your goals scare you, and make sure it's in front of you every day when you're looking at it. And I love how you just said, you gotta feel it.
Mhm.
If you feel it, you're gonna get there, right?
Yep.
Uh, and we can talk about instant gratification versus delayed gratification. And when you again exercise to obtain this discipline in your life, and you're not always reaching for this instant gratification and the dopamine hit that we always need. um and if you're willing to delay that gratification, the rewards at the end are so much greater.
Yeah, so I mentioned I gained 40 pounds. You can't lose 40 pounds overnight,
No.
especially if you don't change your habits.
Yes.
So when it took me actually becoming a pre-diabetic right after COVID. After COVID, after about 3 months, I said, "Okay, I got COVID, I recovered. I'm still not better. What am I doing? What's going on?" So I reached out to my provider. We ran a bunch of tests. And as a nurse, of course, I was throwing those tests out there that I wanted to do. And I asked them to check my blood sugars. I asked them to check my cholesterol. Lo and behold, I'm in my 30s at the time. And I have high cholesterol. I have high glucose. And at that point, I said, I do not want to be a diabetic and I do not want to have heart disease. Heart disease runs in my family. I didn't want that for myself. So that was my goal. And that was my short term goal. All I had to do is put it out there. Hey, I don't want this.
Yeah.
And then I had to sit down, literally, I sat down with a pencil and a paper. It took me 5 minutes. And I said, what are you going to do about this? And I had done a little dabbling in intermittent fasting. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to get a little tougher with this. I'm going to stay focused on this. And I had a colleague from a previous job that I reached out to. She had been very successful with it. I thought, she's my resource. So, one thing I tell nurses all the time, know where your resources are,
That's
not
right.
just in your job, but in your life. And Rob, you've been a great resource for me for many things. Like I said, I had a mentor that was fantastic. She's still a resource for me, and she's been retired for almost 10 years. And it's really important to recognize what your resources are. So I went to my resource. I found out, okay, what do I need to do? It was downloading an app for accountability, right? Every single day. I had to put in how much food I ate, how much water did I drink, how much sleep did I get? Because we know now, and I reminded myself throughout COVID, once I got to that point where, I'm fighting disease and I'm, trying to get healthy again, sleep is one of the best things for you.
Yes.
You need to reduce your cortisol level, your stress hormone. You need to get that down so your body can repair itself. Otherwise, it thinks it's in fight or flight mode and it's going to hold on to everything it can because it thinks it's going to starve. And
Yes.
so important to make sure when you're exercising, you're releasing that stress. When you're relaxing, when you're doing something fun with your family, when you're, just relaxing. That doesn't have to be on the couch every day, but sometimes a rest day is a good thing.
Yes.
And that was something that I did for myself. And let me tell you, in about 6 months, we wear scrubs. Most of the time, scrubs hold everything in and don't really show your true figure. But after about 6 months, my coworkers are asking me, "What are you doing? We're
Mhm.
noticing you're losing weight. What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm intermittent fasting, but I'm exercising too."
Nice.
And I know we talked about it very much in the very beginning. I said, "Hey, Rob, I haven't exercised, got on a treadmill or an elliptical. I haven't played basketball, which I love to do with my son. I haven't done that. I haven't lifted weights in years. How am I going to start doing this routinely?" And I remember you telling me, "Kristen, show up.
Yes.
Even if it's 15 minutes, show up. Do something. If it's not super measurable, go in, walk on the treadmill, walk around the gym, do something."
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And I was telling someone the other day, I used to not be able to run on the treadmill for 15 minutes. Now I go 45 minutes and it doesn't phase me.
Wow.
And it's really amazing because you can see those changes. And like you said, that instant gratification is what everybody wants. They
Yeah.
want that instant dopamine hit. They want that instant gratification because that's what the world gives us.
Yes.
We get those video games that get us instant gratification.
That's
We
right.
get those, if you scroll on social media, you're scrolling through and you look for all the likes. I do it too. I'm sure we all do at some point. How many likes did I get? Who looked at my profile? What did they like my story? And that's that external validation.
And
But
it's dangerous.
it is dangerous. And
Very
to be a great leader, you can feed off that external a little bit, but it really has to be internal.
correct.
It has to be goal driven from your internal environment. And
Absolutely.
it's got to be in your head and in your heart.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That connection between your head and your heart is key. So
right.
that's amazing. No, I love that story, and I love that you shared that with us. Again, that's the leadership's being vulnerable, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a weakness. It's you, parking your ego to be able to help others. And we learn through people connect with you through sharing us stories. I'm a big believer of that. You can go recite a book all you want. You can talk about theoretical stuff all you want. But when humans connect together through stories, it's such a powerful thing,
Hmm.
and it helps a lot of people. So I greatly appreciate you for that.
Yeah.
Now, before we end this podcast, we've come to a segment where I call rapid fire questions. I'm gonna throw some questions at you, Kristen, and whatever that comes to your mind. What's been your favorite leadership book to date?
Okay. So I just read a book. It's called The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. And I love this one. It's not specific to a certain leadership quality
Mhm.
or leadership theory. I love it because it's an everyday book. It's the important part of leadership, and a lot of leaders get lost. And I've seen a lot of friends move out of leadership because of challenges with personality.
Yeah,
And I think as a leader, you have to be confident, as we talked about, in yourself, and it's important as a leader to not feel like you have to fix everybody. And when you feel like you have to fix people, and when you feel like you have to help everybody be successful in everything and not have any accountability for them and their own actions, I think that's one thing as a leader, it's very difficult to let go of.
that's
Um, and I don't know how you are, Rob, but especially as a nurse, I want to help everybody, want to save everybody. And as a new leader, that was one of my biggest challenges. And her book has really emulsified an examination of that theory, and it's let them do them and you do you.
that's right.
You give them an opportunity to be successful in their environment and then their workplace and their specific job, and you can guide them, you can encourage them as much as you want, but unless they want to be successful, they're not going to be.
Exactly.
And so it's a reminder to let them do them. You be a great coach and a mentor, but you can't save everybody and you can't make them be any way that they want to be. So if you haven't read that book, it's one of my favorite things ever. I started listening to her podcast first. It just happened to find a place in my scroll on YouTube. And once I listened to her several times, I thought, I got to get this book. And I read it one and a half times now. I think every time I read it, I find another little nugget of knowledge that I'm writing down while I'm journaling and thinking, okay, how can I apply this to my life? It's been life changing.
Amazing. Awesome.
Yeah.
What is the best advice that you've received to date?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I'm not quite sure. I think I think it came from you, Rob, because it's showing up.
Mm.
You can set all the goals, and I was just talking to my family about this the other day. It was actually my son, and he was complaining about somebody else and what they did to him,
Mhm.
and I said, that sounds like that's their problem, not your problem." And he said, "But if, in a team sport, if the whole team's not there and not working together, it's difficult to be successful. And that's kind of where I threw in that let them. Well, you got to let them. You got to let them do their thing. You got to let you do your thing. But I want you to show up.
That's right.
And that was something again that you reminded me of right out of the gate when we started coaching. Show up. Whether that's at work, whether that's with your family, if you notice you're not having enough family time, you got to show up.
That's
You
right.
gotta show up to your family, you gotta show up to the gym, you gotta find a way in the 24 hours you're given every single day when you wake up, you gotta find a way to show up.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. What's the worst advice that you've received today?
Ugh, that one's tough. I've received a lot of bad advice in my lifetime.
Hopefully, it's not from Rob.
No, no. I think as you move through your leadership journey and you mature as a leader, you reflect a lot back and think, gosh, that wasn't a good idea. And sometimes it's trial and error. Um, I think early on in my career, I had someone tell me, if you show somebody what you can do, they're going to, reward you with the position you want.
Mm,
And I think that is a loaded question. I think that's difficult because I can tell you in my career, I put a lot of things aside to try to hit those marks, to try to, reach that goal. And I lost a lot of time.
yep,
And I think you have to know what the value of your time is. And we only get so much time and we don't know how much time that is.
that's right.
So I think it's important to separate your work and your life, your personal life, because I think you have to have that good work-life balance. I actually had a supervisor one time ask me after I first had gotten married, she said, "Well, you're not gonna have any kids, are you? You're not gonna leave your position." And so I felt intimidated, like, "Oh gosh, I can't have more kids." I had already had one son and I got married and I thought, "Okay, what's this gonna bring me?" And I felt intimidated.
Mm,
In order to keep my job, I had to stay at a certain level and I couldn't have a family and I couldn't do things with my family. I couldn't go on a vacation. I remember them telling me, "You can't take longer than a week. We just can't do without you." Well, I guarantee you, the minute you die, they're gonna be filling your position in a couple weeks.
that's right. Mm,
That's going to happen. You have to have a good work-life balance.
absolutely. What's the What's the one word that describes Kristen best?
Ooh. I would say love.
Mm,
I love people. I love things. If you know anything about me in my personal life, I have 5 dogs, I have 4 horses,
yes.
I have about 30 cows, and they all know me when I walk out. They're always looking for my attention because I distinctly and very clearly show my love. My patients feel it when I take care of my patients. Um, and I think it's important to show love to others because, as you said, the heart and the mind need to connect.
That's right.
And that's truly why I think I became a nurse. My first career was never nursing. I
Mm,
fell into nursing by chance. It was not something that I had dreamed about and craved to be a nurse. I hear people say all the time, "Well, I've wanted to be a nurse since I can remember." That was not me. I did not want to be a nurse. I had no ambition to be a nurse, but it's been one of the best things in my entire life. And I feel like it's been a true calling for me.
amazing. And lastly, where can people find you, Kristen?
Oh gosh, I am on social media all over the place. I actually started a consulting company. I am consulting for quality and safety, including infection prevention. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram. Um, I do have an account on X. My son set that up for me. I can tell you, I don't go on there very often. I have a Facebook account. I'd love to hear from anybody that wants to talk about career motivation, leadership. I love interacting with others on LinkedIn. I have several people that I follow and follow me back, and we share stories and excitement for future goals and leadership. So I'd love to hear from you.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much again for being with me today and sharing your valuable knowledge, experience, and stories with the audience. And for those who have any questions for Kristin, drop it in the box below and I'll make sure it gets to her, and I will share her social media handles with you on the post. So again, thank you very much. For those out there, thank you for tuning in. If you like this episode, please subscribe and follow, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everybody.